The balloting, which was conducted on Wednesday at the party's headquarters in Accra, saw the Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, taking the number 2 slot on the ballot paper. Former Minister of Food and Agriculture, Dr. Wuswefriye Koto, claimed the number 3 position, while number 4 went to former Member of Parliament for Agyapong, Mr. Francis Adainimo. Honorable Agyapong, it may be recalled, was the number 1 aspirant on the ballot paper during last August's Superdelegates Congress, where he took second place at the event, which saw Vice President Dr. Bawumia emerging as the front-runner. The upcoming primary will see 4 contenders following the withdrawal of former Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Alan Kojo Kyerematen, and Boakye Kyerematen Agyapong, the former Minister of Energy. Alan Kyerematen particularly expressed concerns about the intimidation of his supporters. Alan Kyerematen stated in his official announcement that the pronouncements made by some leading members of the NPP, both before and after the elections, also lent weight to his observations. Moreover, Kyerematen highlighted the unprecedented level of intimidation faced by a significant number of delegates at various voting centers across the 16 regions, calling it a first in the history of the NPP. Mr. Boakye Agyapong, who refrained from a runoff with Francis Adainimo to make the shortlist, in his withdrawal statement also pointed at unconstitutional acts in the conduct of the presidential primaries and called it a day. Meanwhile, the New Patriotic Party has announced strict regulations for the upcoming presidential primary, stressing that the party is determined to ensure adherence to these regulations and prevent any breaches. Reverend Professor Aaron Michael Quay, chairman of the Presidential Elections Committee, disclosed these when he addressed the press on Wednesday after meeting with the 4 presidential aspirants and their representatives. Officials from the Electoral Commission were present during the meeting to ensure clear communication and coordination. Professor Quay stated that various issues and requests made by the aspirants had been resolved.
By way of the placement, the tossing of a paper, Honorable Kencity Media takes number 1. The Vice President takes number 2. Honorable Dr. Akuto takes number 3. And Honorable Adainimo takes number 4. That is the final placement by way of the ballot, and this is how it's going to be on the ballot paper for the election. We are very, very proud of our credentials. We can sit and jaw and make things work. And for that matter, from last week, we'll be meeting the relevant persons or their representatives, working on all the modalities. You know, when you're going to play football, we all know the rules of the game before the match starts. And we wanted to ascertain that everybody who is involved will be really in the know. And in fact, part of the process, as we were jokingly saying, we have got our own IPAC so that it will guide the process. And it's not going to be a one-day event. It is going to continue until the day we have the election, and even thereafter. We have resolved a number of issues and requests made by the aspirants themselves.
Michael Quay emphasized that the party is tightening and streamlining the rules to ensure the victory of the NPP as a whole, rather than any particular individual, to unite behind the chosen candidate and secure a win in the upcoming presidential race.
Generally agreed that there will be nothing like camping of persons, so that people will come freely and vote freely on this occasion. The EC officials were present even at the earlier meeting, so that we will be able to iron out these formalities very, very clearly. And we don't say one thing here and then on the ground something else is happening. And we are going to meet the police together with the EC officials, so that everybody sings from the same hymn book on that day.
With these strict regulations and a unified approach, the NPP aims to successfully elect its presidential candidate on November 4th and pave the way for victory in the upcoming general election. Honorable Agyapong, one of the presidential contenders, shared his thoughts on the meeting and matters arising.
Well, it's clear indication that I'm what God has chosen to lead MPP. If you believe in the Bible, everywhere you go, Agyapong is number one. It's a clear indication that I should be given a chance to lead this country. So I'm pleading with delegates that the signs are clearly on the wall that if you vote for Agyapong, you definitely lead this country and break the eight. My expectation is to win because I'm a grassroots man. I have been fighting for the ordinary people ever since. So I know for sure, no matter the amount of money they're going to pay and the intimidation, they'll use their conscience and vote for their man because they don't think of today, but they think of tomorrow. A man who can change their destiny. So I have confidence in the delegates that no matter the amount they give them, they have the brains to choose the best candidate, a man who actually understands the plight of the polling station executives or the ordinary people in this country. So I have confidence that come November 4th, with all the intimidation and whatever, the delegates are going to speak.
Ghana's inflation rate took a surprise dip in August, marking its lowest point in 10 months. According to government statistician Professor Samuel Kwabena, annual inflation decelerated from 43.1% in July to 40.1% in August. This represents the most gradual rate of change since last October. Inflation is the rate of increase in prices over a given period and serves as a gauge for the pace at which prices are increasing. A high inflation rate implies a diminishing purchasing power for individuals as they find themselves paying more for the same goods and services.
Headline figure for August 2023 rate of inflation stood at 40.1%, indicating that between August 2022 and August 2023, prices of goods and services generally went up by 40.1% over the one-year period. That is between August 2022 and August 2023, general prices of goods and services went up by 40.1%. While we continue to see higher rates of inflation, this is the first time that we're seeing a slowdown in the rate of increase in our rate of inflation. Last month, July 2023, the rate of inflation stood at 43.1%, and this was on the back of consistent increases in the rate of inflation in the last 5 months, and we're now seeing a slowdown in the rate of increase by 3.0 percentage points, with the rate of inflation slowing down from 43.1% in July 2023 to 40.1% in August 2023.
Professor Enim attributed the primary cause of this deceleration to food prices. Food inflation saw a reduction from 55% in July to 51.9% in August, while non-food price growth decreased from 33.8% to 30.9%. Moreover, for the first time this year, inflation for imported goods registered a lower rate compared to locally produced items. Locally produced items recorded an inflation rate of 42.4%, while imported items had an inflation rate of 36.2%.
From a food and non-food perspective, we recorded a 21 percentage point difference between food inflation and non-food inflation, with food inflation 51.9% for the month of August 2023 and non-food inflation 30.9%. Respectively, food inflation and non-food inflation have slowed down by 3.1% and 2.9%, given the rates that were recorded for July 2023. Further disaggregating the headline figure of 40.1% for inflation on imported items and inflation on locally produced items. Inflation on locally produced items stood at 42.4% for the month of August 2023, relative to 36.2%. 36.2% for inflation on imported items for the month of August 2023. In the last 12 months, this is the first time we've seen a higher rate of inflation for locally produced items relative to inflation for imported items.
Professor Enim noted that while the decline in inflation is positive news, it was too early to determine if this represents a sustained trend.
Yes, we are seeing rains. Yes, we are seeing harvest happening. Possibly that is what is accounting for the slowdown that we are seeing in food inflation. But because we don't have numbers to that, we cannot specifically say the extent to which that is contributing to the slowdown. So let me come back to the first question on the main drivers for the slowdown. As we have shown, we are seeing that both food and non-food inflation relative to what we saw last month are slowing down. But if you look at it more critically, you see that the slowdown from a food perspective is much steeper than the slowdown in non-food. Specifically, we saw on a year-on-year basis between July and August 2023, food inflation slowed down by 3.1 percentage points relative to 2.9 percentage points from the perspective of non-food inflation. So what we are seeing here is a much sharper drop in food inflation relative to, but both of them have seen a slowdown in their rate of increase.
On a regional inflation basis, Professor Enim disclosed that the Northeast region recorded the highest inflation rate of 60.1%, with the Greater Accra region recording 31.8%.
Point of view, we identified the Northeast region recording the highest rate of inflation of 60.1% and the Greater Accra region recording the least rate of inflation of 31.8% for the month of August 2023. Inflation from the perspective of month-on-month inflation, we recorded deflation of 0.2% for the month of August 2023. Disaggregating this from a food and non-food perspective, both food and non-food inflation recorded a deflation of 0.3% and 0.2% for the month of August 2023.
The Bank of Ghana has so far focused on keeping inflation under control. In July, the central bank raised the lending rate to 30% to combat surging inflation, which stood at 42.5% at the time. The governor of the central bank, Ernest Addison, had said the bank would continue to raise the lending rates policy until the desired inflation level is achieved. Mr. Kwame Owusu, the campaign manager of Honorable Ken Agyapong, a presidential contender of the New Patriotic Party, has commended the Presidential Elections Committee of the party for putting in measures to ensure a fair and peaceful presidential primary come November 4th this year. This follows the Presidential Elections Committee meeting at the party headquarters on Wednesday, which saw the committee engage the presidential aspirants and their representatives to conduct balloting for the primaries and discuss other pertinent issues. Speaking to Oman 107.1 FM, Mr. Kwame Owusu said the committee clarified aspects of the rules and regulations and ironed out some thorny issues relating to the conduct of the November 4th primaries.
The election committee for no year. Almost the to come said the Ebema want to be Emma after say about to nti nyema pii yebo boss no dana kwam ama o ma ya dia ma aye kama nti sane de kwa koto aba na amemfa wahoma esoso en kase won say yisu secular bi na say ya eura kodua general secretary sane about dues payment say one year would dues in good standing by unko ankoto aba enye no kre about ya kotono album na ya na no an yedi koto what you won't you so long as you do album no obetuaba and some but elections committee no omo ye papa mostly bibia e can be a make sense bia no nyina ya no ko bankroom nipa na nyina omo jitum we discuss it really and we are very satisfied with the type of job that the committee is doing.
Mr. Owusu also shared his comments on the balloting for positions on the ballot paper.
It's a good omen. Number one. Number one.
Or catch them.
Operating, I will be number one.
No, so Diana.
I have a and also, and the acquire we wow. Enti when you actually and your papa ebeba. And you know and ebema ya yesi anasi nyesi ba edigidi ani areshimu eba ema enipa edi achi hu se yiwura no ahoho mu kura no ekire obedi ekai enti eno na ama nipa pie ni age number 1 ma abato is a man ba mesremara ya chidifo ma we nya complacency ma obi mfa ho enkoda enkate ese de dayeso ani tipa ni ade ayenti no ye be ese de ye be fa ho ana ye nya adwuma ye start ye adwuma no immediately ye nko door to door ye nya adwuma lending na ye fa she iwura no ani mo nyam ye fa nka na chi ama daye ne butaye ne ade asisi na enso intimi emraso.
The campaign manager for Honorable Agyapong said the time has come to continue and intensify the campaign because they have some outstanding constituencies to visit as they solicit the votes of delegates come November 4th.
Northern region, upper east and northeast. Better 31 to the 3 constituencies. I say a call. Maybe the problem. Now the Akasa de Bayaja, the Bachesha man for choir and passo, and make sure say about one a beco year, especially a bit training agency near Bobo. A bandia, as I say to me, every say a banner, a becoy, Emma Bibian, Kofa, and Tokani, and Noguna, and America, who be a man, the agent to be a coyedma biano, uncle and coye edma. Nayama woman, you about me a showdown. Come November 4.